Hey everyone, it's Wasim here from the channel Handsome Smiles. Welcome to another video. Today I'll be doing a first impressions of a Guerlain fragrance released all the way back in 1912. This is Bleue. This is the Eau de Toilette version. So last week actually I was in London. I visited Harrods and I went to the Guerlain section in Harrods and I did a spray of Bleue, but from their new Les Légendaires collection, and it was the Eau de Parfum version. And I smelt it on card, and I thought it was absolutely beautiful. I went around Harrods to all the perfume sections, and two perfumes really impressed me that day. It was Le Bleu Eau de Parfum from Guerlain, and it was Diaghilev from the House of Roger Dove. Those two fragrances were the standout of all the other fragrances I tested on strip that day. This is the Eau de Toilette version. I've not smelt this version, so I'm going to do a first impressions of this one. But I have a similar sort of understanding of how this would smell because I've smelled the Eau de Parfum version. So Le Bleu, a little bit of a background, is released in 1912, created by Jacques Guerlain. Jacques Guerlain is the third perfumer of the Guerlain house, the master perfumer in line. So his grandfather started the company of Guerlain. Jacques Guerlain is possibly the most famous one. He was behind a lot of their earlier releases that are considered absolute masterpieces and classics. He's known for the female classics. So Jacques Guerlain was behind Shalimar, Mitsuko, Jiki, and as well as Le Bleu. So Jacques Guerlain was inspired to create Le Bleu, and Le Bleu, I believe, means, if I remember, something to do with blue night or something along those lines. I've just forgotten what he meant by Le Bleu in French. So he was inspired to create this when he was walking besides the River Seine at daytime, and it was just beginning to become nighttime. And it's that time between the day just going into the night which sort of inspired him. He saw this blue glow over the sky and the city and the river. He saw this blue glow, and it felt like him, like time just stood still, and he wanted to capture that moment in a scent. So he created this fragrance, Le Bleu. So let's give this a first impression. So this is a used bottle that I bought from eBay for a relatively good price. It's not a absolute vintage bottle or anything. This is, I believe, a 2019 version. The batch code is 9F01. So I think this is 2019. But they now release this in the Les Légendaires collection, and the label is quite different. So just a note there, but let's give this a first impressions. It's a used bottle, so it should spray first time. Actually, it didn't. So there we go. Let's give Le Bleu first impressions. Wow, really beautiful, like a very familiar sort of smell. Like this is sort of a smell I remember smelling when I go to weddings or when you go out. I'm sure people wear this fragrance. It's got a powdery sort of feel and quite a bright feel. So it's very powdery, comes across quite smooth and sweet. There's a touch of iris in here that I know because I've read loads of reviews of Le Bleu. So the iris possibly giving it a beautiful powderiness. There's a subtle sort of sweetness and a floralness as well. I know there's the note of violet in here as well. Very deep and quite rich smelling. I don't get the connotations of the blue sort of smell just yet, but this smells quite clean, quite powdery, quite floral, beautiful iris, very classy and sophisticated. This is a scent which I can imagine people wearing to a formal event. On the spectrum of unisex, I do feel this is a unisex fragrance, but on the spectrum of unisex, this leans slightly more feminine than it does masculine. So I imagine like a beautiful woman wearing a black dress going to a party or a dinner party, that sort of classy sort of vibe. A woman wearing this during like the 30s and 40s, I can imagine, like, you know, those black and white movie stars wearing something like this. This is the sort of vibe that this gives off. Even though it's a very old fragrance from 1912, I don't think it smells dated. It does have a vintage sort of tinge, but a vintage tinge in the sense that it smells classic. It doesn't smell old grandma, but it smells classic, you know, has that classic sort of vibe. This is what you would imagine maybe Marilyn Monroe smelling, how she would smell. It's that sort of vibe. I've got Fragrantica open here. Let's just go through the note listing. So let's see. No, I can't read that without my glasses. So Bleue Eau de Toilette by Guerlain is a amber floral fragrance for women. So this was released for women, but you have to remember at that time, most fragrances were for women. It was only later on where fragrances, companies started releasing fragrances for men. Perfume in the early stages, especially in Western market, was seen as something women would wear. Men would usually spray their handkerchief or something like that during this time. Le Bleue Eau de Toilette was launched in 1912, and the nose behind this fragrance is Jacques Guerlain. At the top of the fragrance, we're going to get Anise and Bergamot. The heart of the fragrance is Carnation, Tuberose, Neroli and Rose. And the base of the fragrance is Iris, Violet, Benzoin, Tonka Bean and Vanilla. So a very beautiful note listing. Now, smelling the card as it's developed and also looking at the note listing, I can definitely sense the carnation in this. Carnation is a floral which gives off a spicy clove-like smell. It's a beautiful note which isn't used much in modern perfumery, but another fragrance which uses carnation quite well is Habit Rouge from Guerlain. I get a beautiful carnation in the heart of that one. I also get carnations in Le Troisième Homme from the house of Caron as well, which uses a beautiful carnation note which gives off like a clove-like smell. Initially, the blast that I got was very sweet, smooth, powdery, and the sweetness I'm getting maybe from the base notes, the Tonka Bean, the vanilla, maybe the benzoin as well. Benzoin is a note which is like a resinous, smoky undertone of vanilla. Definitely the iris are picked up and a little bit of the violet. As the fragrance has developed on this card, I'm picking up a little bit more of the carnation. But overall, this fragrance smells vintagey, powdery, smooth and sweet, and has a touch of cleanness in the opening that I sense. On the spectrum of unisex, this leans a little bit more feminine on first impressions, but imagine a really classy sort of person wearing this to a formal event. That's the sort of vibe that I get from the Eau de Toilette version of Le Bleue from the house of Guerlain. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please do leave me a like and a comment below. I'm going to do a lot more testing of this and then do a full review. Knowing me, it'll probably be about a year. After a year, I'll probably do a full review. But thank you for joining me. Until next time, goodbye.